Thanks for tuning in to our live coverage. The NHL playoffs are just a few days away for the 2025 season, and we're here to cover it with our two resident hockey experts, NHL writer Jan Levine. How's it going, Jan?
I'm good. How are you, Greg?
I'm doing all right, all things considered. Also joining us is hockey handicapper Kevin Rogers. What's up, Kevin?
Greg, it's good to be here. We both wore blue tonight, so we're looking good and ready for the playoffs.
Oh, okay. Yeah, where's your blue there, Mr. USA?
He's got in the hat. Little dark.
I got the Four Nations cap on. Got the Four Nations cap on.
Yeah. Yeah, make sure you're available in a couple of weeks, Jan. We might have to do a Jets draft show again.
So I'm very curious to see who they take at 7 if they stay at 7.
Yeah, so we'll be talking more about that. Of course, why not? We have all the time in the world to talk about other things with the Rangers in Vancouver on the outs looking in. Anyway, I know the team that you cover there, Kevin, the Florida Panthers, are still in it. We're going to get into all of these first round matchups. So we're going to take a look at the first round matchups with predictions. Also going to get your final four predictions, your championship pick, your sleeper pick, and a few other potentially interesting bets that you might want to wager on that we're going to get into here as we talk NHL playoffs. By the way, since this is live, if anybody out there has any questions or comments as we are broadcasting live, just let us know, and we will be sure to answer them. Okay, so first of all, it's too early, right, guys? As far as any trade deadline acquisitions that were made, we really can't tell at this point. There was nothing dramatic. Nobody made a deal that everybody went, "Wow, look at how that changed everything for such and such team." Nothing impactful this season so far.
I mean, in terms of trade deadlines, yeah. I mean, honestly, Kevin, I think we could almost argue the biggest impactful move this year was Jim Montgomery taking over in St. Louis, right? We'll see if it ends up like Craig Berube when he took over for them years ago and they made that run to the Cup. But that team was floundering. Montgomery took over. The Four Nations Cup hit, and all of a sudden, that team just took off like a rocket. And as hot as they were able to hold off a pretty good Calgary team for one of the last playoff spots. So to me, if you're going to go acquisitions, quote unquote, Jim Montgomery to me is probably the best acquisition the team has made this year.
Yeah, it was a total game changer when you look at, how the divorce ended up with the Bruins that, 2 years ago, they have the best record ever in the regular season. They got bounced by the Panthers in the playoffs. They lose in the second round last year, and just things get sour again. The roster wasn't the same either in Boston. They lost some of their big guns, but they get rid of him, and all of a sudden, like 10 days later, he's got a new team. And like you said, Jan, that it took the Blues a little bit of time to get going. They have that 12-game winning streak towards the end of the season. They got a little dicey at the end. They lost a few games, but then they get in, and yeah, you got to feel pretty good about yourself that you're playing with house money at this point. A team that probably was not going to be in the playoffs. And now you never know. You got a shot here. Playing Winnipeg, who I think a lot of people don't really believe in that will go that far. So, yeah, I agree with you on that. That probably the biggest move was made way before the deadline with that coaching move in St. Louis.
Well, let's talk about that series as we I want to go over each first-round matchup and get your pick, starting with Winnipeg, St. Louis. So, as you can see there, those are the series odds. St. Louis is plus 160, and taking a look at your picks, you guys actually only disagreed twice in the first round, and Kevin had a late change or it would have been first. I mean, only one, but it wasn't in this one. Both of you guys believe that even though St. Louis might be the hottest team, that all of that will come to an end with Winnipeg beating St. Louis. You both have it in 6, Jan.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. So first of all, St. Louis is dealing with a couple of injuries right now, right? Dylan Holloway, who's been a godsend. And boy, can you imagine Edmonton with Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg right now? how much of a difference it would make for both of them if they're able to keep each one of them. But you got Dylan Holloway, who's still week to week with his injury. You got Robert Thomas, who got injured the other night for them, and his status may be a bit questionable to start this series. Then on the flip side, and I think we talked about this probably like 2 months ago when we spoke, we said that Nikolai Ehlers being healthy would be a huge component for Winnipeg. And sure, lo and behold, Nikolai Ehlers has aggravated an old injury and he's going to be sitting out. But I just think that Winnipeg is too good, too deep. I give St. Louis a puncher's chance on a couple of reasons. One, as we said, right, they won a cup years ago. Any team that's actually won a cup, you kind of have to give him credit. And Binnington was between the pipes then. Jordan Binnington also obviously stepped up in the Four Nations, got the gold medal for them. So that's a component you have to factor in when it comes to pressure hockey. And they have an overall, I mean, you look at what Jordan Kyrou's done, you look at what Thomas has done. As I mentioned, you look at what Philip Broberg has brought to their blue line. But I just think Winnipeg, with Hellebuck playing the way he's played, and right, these Klieg lights are clearly on Winnipeg and Hellebuck, right? He's done it in the regular season, likely to be the Vezina Trophy winner again, but they've come up short almost every year in the playoffs, right? And whether or not this will be a difference maker will go a long way to kind of what his legacy is going to be moving forward.
I just look at Winnipeg and them beating St. Louis 3 or 4 times. They ended St. Louis's 12-game winning streak towards the end of the season. I'm not going to say Winnipeg is overwhelmingly better than St. Louis, with Winnipeg pretty much dominating this entire year. That they had very few slumps during the year. They had that great start. And like we talked about earlier with St. Louis, that the Blues were not a playoff team. They made the coaching change, and it still took some time with Jim Montgomery to get things going. And, you say to yourself, all right, are the Blues, are they hot? Did they just get a nice little hot streak? And they are what they are as far as being the second wild card team in the Western Conference, that barely getting in on the second to last game of the season. Is that what they really are? Now, I think that Winnipeg probably won't win the Stanley Cup, but to get through this one series, I believe they can do it. And I think to win in 6 games, we always like to go to, maybe they'll win the 6th game on the road, that St. Louis can maybe grab a few. But I would go with the Jets here. They've had their way with the Blues this season, and Jan mentioned some of the injuries with the Blues. I just think Winnipeg, and this is really a tough one to lose if you're Winnipeg. Again, you don't win the Stanley Cup is one thing, but you can't lose in the first round of St. Louis after you've had this kind of season. So I think Winnipeg, they do have some pressure on them to get this first round series win, but let's go with the Jets here in 6 to beat the Blues.
Are they the only St. Louis the only like hot team from the bottom half of the tournament teams? Are they like the only hot team where we could legitimately say, like, let's say they do win a series or two where we go, oh yeah, that team was hot since so-and-so, and they just kept that hot streak going all the way through the 1 round, 2 rounds. We've seen it happen so many times before in the NHL playoffs. We've seen these 7 seeds, these 8 seeds can make a run. Lots of times it's because they are hot going in, and the team that they're playing hasn't had like a meaningful game in months. And so we get the dynamic there. Are the Blues the only one of those teams that could actually kind of, represent that type of hot team?
No, I mean, you got. Go ahead, Kevin. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say both the wild card teams in the East, Montreal and Ottawa, played very well down the stretch. And it's asking a lot to beat division winners. But at the same time, Montreal won 7 of 10 down the stretch. Ottawa, for the last 5 or 6 weeks, has played very well. Minnesota was a little bumpy at times towards the end, so I'm not going to put them as like a hot team. But also, you look at 3 of the 4 wild card teams, they're probably playing the best of anyone. Washington's the one team that's been ice cold down the stretch, and it's kind of one of the, you've been so good the whole season that you've had everything wrapped up. It feels like that there's not a lot of motivation. The only motivation the final few weeks was getting Ovechkin the record. Past that, you're just trying to not get hurt. And we saw the Capitals kind of stumble down the stretch, even though they won the Metro. But these wild card teams, though, they've been playing very well, because Montreal, it seemed like, was not a lock for that. Ottawa's been a lock for that number 1 wild card for a while. Montreal was not. and Montreal to jump a couple teams and kind of get hot. So Montreal is one team that definitely is playing very well.
Yeah, absolutely. No question. I mean, Montreal has been a tremendous story coming seemingly kind of out of nowhere. I don't think if you had asked anybody 2 months ago if Montreal was going to make the playoffs, they would have said yes. But Cole Caulfield has stepped up his game. Nick Suzuki has truly become a number one center. You look now, them adding Ivan Demidov, who was the 5th overall pick last year, to a lineup who's got some fresh blood. And look, I mean, I don't think either one of us are predicting an upset in there, but I do think that if both of the wild cards give the the top seeds in each of those divisions a bit of a battle and make it interesting, I don't think either one of us would be surprised, just because of the fact that they've kind of been playing playoff hockey for the last month, while the number one seeds to a certain extent, and especially Washington, has kind of put it on cruise control. Okay. And the question is whether or not they're going to be able to, kick it back up again as you get started, as you hit the postseason. So to me, that's the only kind of question that's a little bit outstanding is, has Washington maybe taking their foot off the gas pedal, and especially focused more on the OV record than on their record overall? Is that something that's going to damage them come playoff time, especially early on in the playoffs?
Yeah. If it doesn't damage them in the first round, then then I think they're safe. Okay. So then out of those two, because both of you guys, spoiler alert, both of you guys also picked Washington. So, and we'll get into that when we talk about the East. But I got to ask you then, if you did have to pick one of those hot teams to win, who would it be? Would it be St. Louis or Montreal?
I mean, I'm going St. Louis, especially if Robert Thomas is healthy. I mean, I think that to me, that's the biggest key of all. If Thomas is healthy, they have a shot to win that series. Not a great shot. I'd give him a little bit of a better shot clearly with Holloway there, because he's a top 6 forward who scored 30 plus goals this year. But without him, it does hurt their offense. But if they have a healthy Thomas, and the way they've gone into the playoffs and how hot they've been, and they have several guys on that roster who won the cup previously and have that experience, to me, I'd give them the best shot out of those two wildcard teams.
I'm not going to say that Montreal is going to necessarily pull the upset, but I will say this about this series against Washington, that the Capitals beat them twice early in the season, which is an unfair representation for now because Washington was playing so well at the beginning and Montreal wasn't. And then Montreal beat them in January. They seem to have played since January. So it's been a while, and I feel like they are different teams. The Capitals are still good, but also, can we go to this with the Capitals? They still were the second wild card team last year, and now you jump all the way to the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. And yeah, they picked up Logan Thompson from the Golden Knights. They improved the goaltending. And I mean, Ovechkin had a crazy season. He missed 16, 18 games and still had 40 plus goals. He still was fantastic, broke the record, even missing all that time with that leg injury. But is Washington, are they the deepest team in the Eastern Conference? I don't think so. Montreal, yeah, it's your first time at the ball in a while. They made it the pandemic year to the Stanley Cup final. And like Jan mentioned, with some of the young talent they have, and Sam Montembeault, who was with the Panthers for a little as their backup, bouncing in and out. He's been their starting goalie this season. He's kind of carried the load there. Montreal, is Montembeault ready for the big stage is obviously the question there. I don't know how much Washington's goaltending, we really trust long term. But Montreal could give Washington some fits, I think, in that first round. I don't see this as the Capitals just cruising by the Canadiens.
So you guys will be taking different teams then. Kevin, yeah, if you had to, you'll take Montreal.
I agree with what Kevin said on Montreal, right? I don't think either one of us would be shocked if Montreal make this series, given the way they play. Like I said, as Kevin also said, right? They've kind of taken their foot off the gas, and they've cruised really the last 2 months with very little to play for. Now you got to ramp it up again because it's a whole different animal. The big thing is, you know what? Montreal comes in with house money and doesn't know any better given how young that team is, right? They can just let it fly, and wherever it lands, it lands. And look, they have a good coach in Marty St. Louis, right? St. Louis can kind of give them playoff experience and has gotten that team to coalesce a lot quicker than I think most of us would have thought. And look, Lane Hudson has been phenomenal. And, you look at that blue line and it's okay, but look, I don't think either one of us would be shocked if they're upsets, right? It's hockey. I mean, We saw the Flyers as an 8 seed advance all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals 15, 20 years ago. So nothing shocks us anymore.
Okay, so getting back before we move on from Winnipeg, St. Louis, which one of these would you go with? Because I know both of you picked the series in 6, so that's 2-1 on the money line. That's the way you got it. That's how you would go here, correct? You would go. You would, if anybody asked you, you would say, yeah, go ahead, 6 games, 2-1 on the money line.
Yeah, I'd go with that. I don't think it would be a sweep. I think St. Louis can hang in the series, but I mean, if it was 5 games, I don't think it would be insane. But I don't think it's going to go to 7 though.
How about this?
Yeah, what 4 plus a
So
little
this
over 4
is
to 1,
what you would
know?
Recommend as well. Winnipeg 4-2,
Yep.
4-1 on the money line.
Yep.
Yes.
I mean, and why? And you feel pretty confident of that too. So it's double, obviously, the odds. Even though you're safer in case St. Louis wins the series 4-2, but you think it's worth it then to just go ahead. If anybody was asking you, you'd say, yeah, I still think it's worth it. Instead of taking just a series at 4-2 at 2-1, go ahead and take Winnipeg to win it outright 4-2, and I'll take the 4-1.
I mean, I would look at 4-1 and 4-2. I mean, why not? Just look at both of them. You get pretty good odds on both of them, and just hope that St. Louis could win at least 1 game.
Okay, so you would take so both of these 4-1 odds, which is obviously a good way to do it because you can put $100 on both and just will come out ahead. Jan, you feel the same way or differently?
Yeah. No, I'm still sticking with what I said. Winnipeg in 6. I mean, that's kind of the view.
I'm just saying regarding this opportunity you have.
Yeah,
here,
I'm going to stick with what it is. I mean, I still think it's the same. I still think that St. Louis is going to give them a little bit more of a battle than people expected to. Would it be shocked if I saw Winnipeg 4-1? No, not in the slightest.
Okay. Let's now move on to the next one. Dallas and Colorado. Now, here's one of the interesting ones, the lines. Dallas is the 3 seed. Colorado is the 5 seed. Yet Colorado is the favorite here at -140 to +120. And even though the 3 seed is the dog, you're both going with the favorite. You're both going away from that 3 seed and taking the Colorado Avalanche. And both of you guys like this Colorado team. Does that really have a lot to do with what happened at the trade deadline, Jan?
I mean, getting Brock Nelson certainly helped. I think more it's the 2 injuries that Dallas has, to me, that sways it. One, if Miro Heiskanen was going to be back for this series and he is a number 1 blue liner, my thought process would be definitely somewhat different. And now with Jason Robertson supposedly leaving the arena last night wearing a brace on his knee and very doubtful for this series, and that takes away a prime goal scoring option for Dallas. When you add the 2 of them together in a series that's basically going to be close, and now you've lost a potential return of a number 1 blue liner and a top 6 forward who is a 35 to 40 goal scorer, to me, that has to have significant weight in terms of who you take as a favorite in the series. And look, Colorado in general was to me was kind of a pick 'em beforehand, based upon what we've seen out of both teams and knowing what I expect out of both teams. But now, when you take out two significant components from a Dallas squad, to me, that has to push the money towards Colorado, which is also why, if you probably look at how much the odds have changed in the last 48 hours, my guess is there's been a significant movement away from Dallas and towards Colorado.
When I look at Dallas and what they've done this season, they feel like they've been the Stanley Cup favorite or one of the top 2 or 3 favorites the entire year. And you have these injuries now at the worst time, but also a couple notes down the stretch. So Dallas is a 7-game losing streak. And I understand you can hit the reset button going to the playoffs. It means nothing. You blow that 3-goal lead in the final minutes of Vancouver. 7 straight. 7. And the loss to Vancouver, Greg, you're up 3 goals with a minute to go, and they tie it. You lose in overtime. I mean, don't tell me that it means nothing. Like, I really don't believe that. And looking at Dallas's last 9 wins since the beginning of March, 7 of those wins came against non-playoff teams. So they really haven't beaten a lot of good teams, and they haven't won a game in a while. They have injuries. They're just not playing well. And on the flip side with Colorado, major revenge spot for losing to Dallas last year in the playoffs. So there's definitely motivation there.
I like it.
With the pieces they picked up, I just believe that Colorado, I think that they'll bounce Dallas in the first round.
So you don't, and again, because of the injuries as well, and everything that you just talked about, this isn't one of those situations where you're a little bit concerned with Dallas feeling like they're being dissed for being the dog, because they know it. Everybody knows it. They know that they're now considered, the dogs in this series. You're not really worried about that. You feel pretty confident that this is just one of those situations where Dallas is just way over their heads at this point. And does this say more about, it's just a series, say more about the Stars than it does Colorado?
I mean, I believe it does. I think that Dallas is just playing its worst. This is just everything bad at the worst time. I think that's what it's about. That Dallas is still a really good team, that no one's taken away what the Stars are, and that they're one of the better teams in the Western Conference, one of the better teams in the NHL. They had better odds to win the Stanley Cup than Winnipeg, who was leading the division the whole time. What's funny with Dallas is I believe it was the Pittsburgh game, they were down 4 points to Winnipeg. And if they would have won that game, they would have been within 2 and maybe still had a shot after everything Winnipeg's done this year to still win the division. They lost that game to Pittsburgh. They had the Vancouver meltdown. They had just a stretch where they couldn't win. They got blown out by Nashville in the finale. And you kind of feel like, oh, we're that close to winning the division. Now we're stuck playing Colorado in the first round, and our season could be over in a week and a half with how bad things went and the injuries. I think it's all going bad at the worst time for Dallas.
The spread, if Colorado wins this in 6, is 190. And if you decide to take the correct score and go that route, it's again a 6. You're both going 6. So that would be Colorado 4-1 if you just want to go that route. And then how about also just the possibility, Jan, that because everything you're saying to me sounds right. And if it does happen, I get the feeling, because I don't see I look at all your predictions here, and out of all of them, there's 4, 8, 12, 16 predictions. Only 2 are in 5 games. And I happen to believe that if you guys are right, and the series is over, and that's exactly what we think about that series, it's the same thing that happened in the series, I don't think Dallas is winning 2 games.
Well, I mean, first of all, let's not discount Dallas completely, right? I mean, just because we pick Colorado doesn't mean that we're discounting Dallas by any way, shape, or form, right? I think we all view Dallas as a tremendous team overall that unfortunately slumped at the worst time possible and then had a potentially massive injury in game 82, right? So irrespective of that, if Robinson hadn't gotten hurt, we probably would say this is probably a 50-50 series. That shows just how good Dallas really is, but it also shows just how good Colorado is, right? Just because Dallas finished above them in the standings, and it wasn't like they were 20 points ahead of them. I think they were 6 points ahead of them. I mean, Colorado is a phenomenal hockey club, as is Dallas, right? And I don't think either one of us, if Dallas somehow found a way to win this series, I don't think either one of us would fall over in shock and go, oh my God, I can't believe that happened, right? Dallas is a damn good squad. The unfortunate part is that their defenseman, who's been out for several months, who was supposed to come back, is not ready to come back yet. And they also ended up losing a major component in a top 6 winger. But look, Colorado also just got Gabriel Landeskog back, who missed almost 3 years. If he gives them anything, and that's basically an emotional boost for them. And then you think about the other names that they have on this squad, and they now have a pretty good goaltender in Mackenzie Blackwood, who did slump down the stretch, but was very good during the middle part of the season. there's a reason why a lot of people are picking Colorado potentially to win the Cup.
All right. By the way, both of you guys, when we did the show, the deadline show, and went over some of the questions, predictions, you both said Colorado was a really good buy. And they were, because they were 14-1 at the time. And now they are down to right around 8-1 to win the Cup. So we'll find out whether or not either one of you have picked Colorado to win the Cup in just a little bit. Let's move on to Las Vegas and Minnesota. There's the line, 205 to 170. And once again, both of you are on the same team, and both of you are on the favorites. Once again, 3 for 3. A little bit different, though. Jan, you believe this one is going to go the distance, where Kevin actually thinks it's going to be over in 5. So, Kevin, why do you think this series is going to go fairly quickly?
When I look at the Golden Knights, I still think they outclass Minnesota. They beat them all 3 times this year. Going back the last few seasons, Vegas has owned them. So that's number one. I mean, they just totally dominated them. And I get that Minnesota was out without Kirill Kaprizov for a while, their best player. So that doesn't help, but he's back now. So you see how it's been a bit of a boost for them of late. But, you know, when I look at the Wild, I just don't think that they can make this series, you know, keep it going for a while. If you look at Minnesota down the stretch, and again, like I said with Dallas, you hit the reset button, it doesn't matter. Minnesota won 4 of their final 5 games, all 4 games in overtime. So those are swings that can go either way. And during that stretch, the last 4 games came against non-playoff teams. So they beat Dallas in overtime, that Sunday afternoon game where they trailed early and they ended up winning in overtime. But this is a team that they went on the road to New York. They lost to the Islanders. They lost to the Rangers in overtime, lost to the Devils in the shootout. That, yeah, they've won a couple games here down the stretch. I just think Vegas is the better team. And again, like we talk about all these series, if they go longer, is anything really a surprise? Nothing's a surprise if that happens. But I just believe here that Vegas can take care of business at home, win a road game, and then finish things off back at home.
So my reason for taking Minnesota is Minnesota to extend the series is the return of Kaprizov and Eriksson Ek, right? First of all, you guys know I'm a huge Kaprizov. I love Kirill Kaprizov. I mean, he's one of my favorite players in the league. He's a highlight reel waiting to happen and makes that team a dangerous offensive squad. Then when you factor in the return of Eriksson Ek, that lengthens them down the middle. That helps them as well. And thirdly is the return to form of Philip Gustafsson, which is something that didn't happen last year. Look, I personally think, Vegas on paper is a much better team. They're a deeper defense. Their blue line is healthy again. Aiden Hill has won a cup and was a big reason why the Knights won a cup that year. Barbashev has played great. Jack Eichel has played great. Mark Stone is healthy, which is not always the case. And look, there's a reason also why probably the Knights are the favorite to come out of the West. And I do think they're going to beat Minnesota. I just think Minnesota, I give them a bit more of a puncher's chance because of the return of Kaprizov and the return of Eriksson Ek and the depth up front to make this a bit more of a series than may appear to be initially. That's all. But I do still think Vegas advances. I just have them advancing in 7 as opposed to 5 or 6.
All right. And then we've got Edmonton and the LA Kings to round out the West. And we finally have a series where you guys are going to be on opposite ends. Matter of fact, Kevin, you went with all 4 West favorites. And Jan finally picked the dog. So let's start with Jan. Your reason for taking your lone dog in the West and having it be the LA Kings against this Edmonton team that knocked them out last year for a reason, and they just seem to just have their number, whether it's style or whatever the case may be, but you feel that's going to change.
Every dog has its day, right? And they've had sand kicked in their face the last couple of years between that series. I mean, when you hear it's Edmonton, LA, the automatic is, all right, check box goes next to Edmonton. They're going to beat LA. I just think the acquisition and I know it's going to make a little bit painful for you, Greg, but the acquisition of Andrei Kuzmenko and what he's meant to that team up front, especially on the power play, has been a big difference maker in terms of it. And then B, secondly, the play of Darcy Kemper between the pipes has been great. And I do think while Calvin Pickard's been good and Skinner's been okay, I actually give LA a significant advantage right now between the pipes. And the return of Drew Doughty, who came back a couple of months ago, and his health, I just happen to like what LA's done this year. I think they were a surprise team to a lot of us. I don't think many people gave them a realistic shot. Ironically, the two guys traded for each other, Pierre-Luc Dubois and Darcy Kemper, have paid immediate dividends for the two teams that acquired them. And the two teams that got rid of them were probably more than happy they got rid of each one of them for each other, because it was LA and Washington in that trade. And I personally think the Kings, in terms of their possession ability, their ability to grind teams down, but especially the advantage they have on the power play lately, I just have a hunch that they're going to finally slay the Edmonton Beast.
I mean, when you look at the line, that's the only thing that scares me is Edmonton favored here, even though LA finished a few points ahead of them. And LA was one of the best home teams in the NHL this year. That you can't take away from them. But the last 3 years with the Kings getting eliminated by the Oilers in the opening round, I mean, it's got to weigh on you if you're the Kings. And I get, eventually we'll slay the dragon, whatever the case is. But Edmonton still has two of the top goal scorers in the league. And again, it's about health. If McDavid and Draisaitl are healthy, then it's going to obviously be a tough task for LA. If they are not as healthy as they seem, then it's a big advantage for the Kings. And yes, the Kings have a bit of an advantage in net, where Stuart Skinner, probably not 100% healthy. We'll see if it's him or if it's Pickard. That you probably have a lot more faith in Darcy Kemper on the LA side. But when you still have two of the best players in the world on your team, and Edmonton made that run to the Stanley Cup final last year, and understandably they had that long unbeaten streak earlier in the year to set themselves up, where Edmonton's, I feel like, has been more, I guess because the Pacific isn't really that good past Vegas, LA, and Edmonton. They have a lot of average teams, the average to bad teams in that division, that Edmonton did enough to be the 3 seed out of it. I just look at the line, I look at the history, and you know what, Jan? If the Kings win, good. I'm just not going to be on the Kings side and Edmonton beats them again and say, I should have known Edmonton was going to do it again. So I got to play that angle with Edmonton.
I wouldn't be shocked at all if Edmonton wins that series, right? We've seen this dance before, right? I'm just saying sooner or later, LA is going to break through. When that sooner is, I don't know, but the acquisition of Kuzmenko, and I've watched them play the Rangers and what that power play looked like and how seamless it was, and what that's done to their top 6 and Kemper between the pipes and Rittich as a backup. I just happen to say that that team looks better than I thought they were going to. And look, Edmonton's finally healthy with Draisaitl back, but do you have confidence in Calvin Pickard or Stuart Skinner right now? Even though both have played better, Skinner's been better lately after that rough patch. I just happen to like what LA's done. Though, look, if Edmonton whitewashes them, far be it from me to be shocked, because they've made them look horrible the last 3 years.
Well, one of two things can happen, and that is that Edmonton, because we've seen this a lot. We see it in the NFL. We see it in a lot of sports where you make that run, you go all the way to the championship, and you lose, and then the next year is a big disappointment. Now, for Edmonton, like you said, they kind of sleptwalked their way into the postseason, and maybe if there was more competition in the division, maybe they wouldn't have even made the postseason. Maybe they would have been one of those teams. So we'll find out in the first round. So maybe they do get beat in the first round, and there you go. Or if they win the series, maybe it was, well, we've been there, we just did what we had to do. Now it's the playoffs. Now we're going to gear up, and now we're going to be the team that we were in the postseason last year. So
look, and I think Mattias Ekholm being out this opening round is actually pretty big. I mean, Ekholm's probably been their most consistent D-man this year, along with Evan Bouchard, but him being out to me is a kind of material injury. I mean, Ty Emberson scored last night, but he's clearly not the defensive defenseman that Ekholm is. And to me, with LA and the big bodies that they have, that could be a difference maker down low in front of either Pickard or Skinner, depending on who's between the pipes.
Okay, let's go to the East. and Washington and Montreal. So this is the biggest line, 330 to 260. So you can get Montreal at 260 just to win the series. You don't have to pick games or anything. It's exact. Just take Montreal plus 260. And you both have Washington, but you once again, you both have them in 6, so you don't think that this is going to be an easy series. So just how dangerous can Montreal be in this first round, Kevin?
I think that, like I mentioned it earlier, I think they really can be. And Jan made the comment about Marty St. Louis that he's won cups with Tampa Bay. He's been there before. That this is not. It may be a rookie head coach or as far as in the playoffs, but he has the experience of being the Stanley Cup and he knows what it's like to win. So I think that's a big help. Again, the big question is, can Sam Montembeault really carry this team in goal? But they do have the talent to score. And Lane Hudson's had the great rookie season on defense. But on the Washington side, telling you, the expectations are so high for this team. Following the Ovechkin scoring chase of Wayne Gretzky for this year, and I still wonder who the real Washington Capitals are. I don't think they are the team that we saw last year that barely got in the playoffs and lost to the Rangers. But at the same time, to be the best team in the East overwhelmingly, I think it may be a little bit of a stretch. So I still think Washington's going to win this series, but it will not be as easy as they'll just step right in because they're the one seed in Montreal was out of the wild card for most of the season until their late run. But the Canadians are just playing better right now than the Capitals are. There's more desperation with them. They got in. You said house money before. That's what it is. Where Washington, I don't know if they peaked earlier in the season. Maybe that's the case.
So I'm gonna go on a limb here. I'm gonna say Montreal is gonna win Game 1.
Oh,
because of the factor of them coming in house money, hot. Washington hasn't had to ramp it up. Montreal is gonna come in my opinion, blazing fire. I'm gonna say Cole Caulfield's gonna have 2 goals in that game. I'm gonna go on a limb. I just have a hunch from what I've seen out of Caulfield, right? So I still think Washington's gonna win the series. I think they're going to give. I think Montreal is going to give Washington all they can handle. I don't think Montembeault is a elite goalie, but he's been more than good enough down the stretch. And like I said, you see what Lane Hudson's done. You see what Caulfield's become. You see adding Ivan Demidov. You see what Nick Suzuki has become. Got a little grit between Anderson and Gallagher. I mean, on paper, Washington's a better team. Look, the odds we both could have gotten before the season on Washington having the best record in the East and winning the Metro Division probably would have been fairly staggering, even with the additions of Matt Roy and the additions of Jacob Chychrun, who have been 2 massive difference makers on their blue line to go along with John Carlson. But on Washington's a better team. But as we've seen in the playoffs, just because you're the better team, that doesn't mean anything. Luck and momentum go a long way in terms of having an impact on what happens with teams come playoff time. And I just have a hunch that they're going to start this series hot. Whether or not they can maintain that, I don't think so. But I do think they're going to throw a little bit of a scare into Washington.
All right. Well, I think then the advice from Jan then would be, if you like Washington to win the series and you want to place a bet on Washington to win the series, wait after Game 1. So it'd be interesting to see what the line would be because it's such a big line. But Washington would probably still be, who knows?
They'll be favored. I just think it'll narrow substantively if they lose Game 1.
Yeah. But I wonder how much. That's the thing.
Right.
But anyway, it might be enough. We might want to be a little patient before you take Washington because, hey, do you really want to put up 330 to make 100 in a hockey series when anything can happen? Because there really aren't any bad teams in these playoffs, right? There really isn't one of those situations where for sure there's one team in this postseason that there's just no way they're winning the series. Correct, right?
No, not to me. Look, would I be shocked if Ottawa or Montreal make a long run? Yeah, I'd be a little shocked if you asked me, Would I be shocked if St. Louis did the same?
Yeah, but they're not bad teams.
No, none of them are
Yeah.
bad teams, quote unquote.
Yeah. None of them are there just because.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Toronto, Ottawa. So, Kevin, this was your late change of heart. And this is actually the first dog you've taken so far. Ottawa at plus 145. Toronto, as you can see there, at minus 170. And I guess you haven't bought in on this Toronto Maple Leafs. This is just a new season, new coach, new personnel, the division title, all that stuff. You think it's smoke and mirrors?
I just think the pressure is going to be too much for this team to make a long-term run. I mean, you look at it, first division title in 25 years. Look, they went 0-3 against Ottawa this year. They didn't beat Ottawa in 3 meetings this year. And the Senators definitely have a lot of I think, I don't know if momentum is the right word, but definitely confidence, I would say. Brady Tkachuk is back. And they have a couple guys, they have Stützle and Drake Batherson. They have guys that could score on this team. You have Linus Ullmark, who, I mean, he's been there. I mean, you look at the guys. The one issue I always have with Toronto, you have the goal scorers, but do you have someone consistent in net? And either if it's Anthony Stolarz, who was the backup to Sergei Bobrovsky with the Panthers last year, who was one of the better backups in the NHL and got his money in Toronto. He got hurt earlier in the season, and it's been him and Wall going back and forth. That do you really depend on those guys to carry you to a cup? And it's not to say that Ottawa's a better team than Toronto. I mean, Toronto has got one of the best players in the world in Austin Matthews. They still have Tavares. They still have Mitch Marner, who leads them in points. They still have Nylander. Like there's the talent's overwhelming on Toronto, but because of the pressure, because of everything that they have to endure, trying to not only get to the Stanley Cup, but just win a couple rounds. And this is the first time in a while that now, guess what? You're playing your brethren. That you're not playing an American team. Now you got, all of Canada focused on this series because you're going to get, obviously, a team advancing from Canada out of the series. But you don't normally see, I mean, I get in the West, we've seen it before, but really it matters more in the East. And have Toronto and Ottawa playing for the first time in the playoffs. And Toronto, this is a tough one to get over if you lose this to Ottawa. And Ottawa feels like, hey, we're here. If we haven't been there in a while. If we can win this series, great. If we lose, we lost. But I think Ottawa, though, if they pulled off the upset, I would not be surprised. I really wouldn't.
So I wouldn't be shocked either. Look, Ottawa, the acquisition of Linus Ullmark was a huge difference maker, right? They didn't have a goalie they could count on. They immediately signed him to a long-term deal, establishing their belief in him as their goalie for the short and the long term. And as Kevin mentioned, right, offensively, you look at Tim Stützle, who's blossomed over since he's been drafted into a true number one center. Drake Batherson has always scored. Brady Tkachuk has been chomping at the bit to do what his brother did. All right, you have Claude Giroux, who's a veteran guy. I am to love David Perron. They made an exchange of centers in terms of dealing with Buffalo, and they were able to get Dylan Cousins to be their number 2 center. It's something that they kind of lacked a bit as a true number 2. Josh Norris was kind of always hurt. He wasn't able to fill the bill. And then you look also what Jake Sanderson has become, right? He's kind of morphed into taking over as their number 1 blue liner from Thomas Chabot. And all that being true, and all the pressure on Toronto and the Battle of Canada, I just have a hunch this is Toronto's year finally, right? You first of all, if they don't do it, right, that may increase the likelihood that Mitch Marner is gone, right? That he may end up being more likely to leave as an unrestricted free agent. Austin Matthews probably wants to change the narrative. They have goaltending you would think that you can count off between Stolarz and Woll, which is something that's been a massive issue there in the past, and that's been a major problem in Toronto has been their goalkeeping, right? If there is an area to me of weakness to an extent, it is on defense. And that to me has been an area where there's been problems in the past, but I kind of think that this is the year that they finally surpass that issue and finally find a way to get past it, though it's clearly not going to be an easy series, right? I have it going 7. I do think Ottawa is going to give them all they can handle also. I think on paper they're somewhat evenly matched. They give Ottawa the edge in blue line. I think they're even goaltending-wise, and I think up front, given the depth that Ottawa has, even with the bigger names, including Matthew Nyes in Toronto, I do think Ottawa can match them goal for goal. I just think at the end of the day that Toronto is finally going to find a way to end the narrative that they're playoff choke. That Toronto is going to end the narrative that they're playoff chokers and find a way to get past the first round.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know why it takes them so long to find a goalie. I don't get it. I just don't. So I think there's enough talented goalies out there. Not that every team has an elite goalie, but you would think that with all the success Toronto's had, with all these postseason appearances in a row, that just who like in the last 20 years, who's their best goalie?
20 years?
Because they've been in how long is their run? Postseason run? Is it 20 years?
Probably. I mean, they had Freddie Anderson, who was a pretty good goalie, just he could never stay healthy.
Yeah, so we can't even recall of a Toronto goalie that
Felix
we'd go,
Potvin?
oh yeah, that guy was
way
good.
Too far back.
Who's that?
Felix Potvin? Well, that's going way too far.
That's what I was thinking. That's the 90s.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
the 90s Potvin, I think.
Wow. Okay. Let's now move on to this big series here, the Florida series. What a surprise. We're getting these two teams facing each other again. And I must say this. Look, I don't know. Maybe I voiced a different opinion. I just wish they would go back to the 1-8. These same series playoff matchups every year. I'm so bored of them. But that's just me. I don't know how the general public feels. Is it, by the way, is this like a money, because it's all about money. Is this why they do this? Is this have they felt that after this change that they made, we made the right choice, that they're real happy about everything that's happened ever since they decided to make sure that, these teams would play each other, these division opponents, or, would play each other every year?
I mean, Bettman's been asked, and it's been brought up repeatedly as to whether or not he'd make a change. And he has said he's, quote unquote, happy with the way it is right now. So there does not appear to be an appetite in the NHL offices to make that change. Personally, I disagree with it. Personally, I think they should make the change. In my opinion, it should be one of those things that we should go back to the 1 versus 8, but he has shown no desire or stubbornness, depending on your view, to go ahead and make a change back to the old format.
All right. Here's another one of the series where the 3 seed is the dog. Florida. That's where they should be. I mean, Florida, come on, man. They're the defending champs. They should be the favorites here. It's very slightly. Minus 115 to 105. But Tampa's the 3 seed. Florida's the 5 seed. Unlike what you guys did with the Dallas-Colorado series, where you did go with the 5 seed, both of you are taking the dog here and the 3 seed, including you, Kevin. You're going against the Panthers, your Florida Panthers. Why are you doing this? What happened to this juggernaut that we were all seeing after the Cup and the way they were looking this year? And what's going on? What's happening?
Number one, I know they beat Tampa Bay last year, but now this is the 4th straight year that you're facing, or 4th out of 5 years that you're facing Tampa Bay in the playoffs. And
boring.
It's just, but you know what it is? Tampa Bay has their number. And we talk about that with Edmonton and LA, and I get the Panthers finally got over on them last year, but Tampa Bay loses Steven Stamkos, and it's like they got better this year with some of the moves they made. With Gensel and the amount of goals he put up this year. Braden Point always kills the Panthers. When you have Kucherov healthy, that's a big difference. And, the one thing when you looked at down the stretch, if the Panthers would have played the Maple Leafs or the Lightning, I would have felt better against the Maple Leafs if I was the Panthers because they had more success against them and the goalie situation. I mean, you got to face Vasilevsky again, who is one of the best in the game. And I understand he's getting up there, in age, but still, like that was the one thing. You're like, oh, great. Now you have to face a team with a better goalie and 4 players over 35 goals on Tampa Bay this year. We look at the Panthers side, you lose Matthew Tkachuk at the Four Nations, and he's been hurt. He's been skating, but you'd hope he'd come back for game 1. The only good news is that they're the last series to begin on Tuesday, so there's a few extra days to begin. And you're getting Aaron Ekblad back in game 3 after the suspension. The 20-game suspension is done after game 2. But, Sam Reinhart had a career year last year, still a good year this year, but he didn't he didn't match that this year. Alexander Barkov was still very good. They pick up Seth Jones from the Blackhawks in that Spencer Knight trade, and Jones has been productive. Obviously, the Brad Marchand, he was hurt for a bit, and he scored a little bit since getting some more playing time. But nobody's expecting Brad Marchand to take over and be the one of old. He's just there to hopefully get a big goal here or there with him. I just think Tampa Bay's too loaded. I think that's the problem. And if Tkachuk isn't back, or if he's not 100%, that's a big guy to lose, and they've been without him for the last few months. So I just don't think they beat Tampa Bay 4 times. I really don't.
Florida, in my opinion, fell apart down the stretch, right? Part of it could be the absence of Matthew Tkachuk. Part of it could just be the wear and tear of having 2 cup runs in back-to-back seasons, and you're in your 3rd year now, and you're kind of like starting to wear down a little bit. Part of it could be a loss of interest. But, we talked about before, and right, we said, first of all, the team that doesn't win the Central is going to have to probably have a battle of attrition against their opponent in this 2-3 matchup, right? And it turns out it's Colorado-Dallas. If Dallas had won the division, they'd have a much better shot at advancing than having to face Colorado, right? And we said that in this series, right? The loser of the Atlantic Division is going to have their hands full in the first round, right? As opposed to Toronto, who will have a difficult series against Ottawa. A little bit different in terms of the physicality that's going to take place between Tampa Bay and Florida. And Florida basically was leading the division, had a shot at winning division, and just fell apart down the stretch. Part of it, like I said, injuries haven't helped. You have Ekblad that was out. You have Matthew Tkachuk that was out. So those are clear factors associated with making a difference. But, part of it is all about the matchups, right? And Tampa Bay comes into the postseason, tonight's loss notwithstanding, on a lot of a hotter streak and a lot more of a run, and with a lot more confidence than Florida does. And part of that Florida is going to depend on, are you getting Ekblad back, and are you getting Matthew Tkachuk back, and what are both of them going to bring you when they come back? But give me Braden Point, give me Nikita Kucherov, give me Victor Hedman, give me Andrei Vasilevsky, give me Yanni Gord, who they re-imported, give me Ryan McDonough, who they brought back at the beginning of this year. They are a veteran-laden team who is going to sound weird, but has the advantage of being eliminated early last year and got to rest up a little bit after winning 2 cups in a row and getting, that's a battle of attrition. I mean, you talked about to go way back, right? And it was much fewer games, but you go back and listen to what, Edmonton said about facing the Islanders in 84 and 83 and losing to them, and they're fresh as daisies in the locker room, and the Islanders are beaten to tar, yet they found a way to get it done. And then the next year, Edmonton was the fresher legs and wiped them out in 5 games. To me, it kind of sounds like, Tampa got a chance to reset last year, realized what they missed in terms of losing, especially their divisional and intrastate rival. And this year came back a little bit of an increased purpose and pep in their step, and a little bit of a lineup now that wants to show that they don't have Stamkos, but they're still an awfully good hockey club.
The final series is Carolina and New Jersey. You both sold on the Devils at the deadline, and they barely hung on to make the postseason. you're not bought though, or you have not changed your mind. You're sticking with selling on the Devils, that they'll go out here. Matter of fact, Kevin, you think they're going to go out fairly fast in 5, and Jan, you're not too far behind with 6. So, Kevin, are the Devils any different? Do you have any change of a heart of how you felt at the deadline, of how you feel now? Have they, been healthier? Have they played any better? Or are they just that same team, and they're just very fortunate that they were able to make the postseason?
I don't think it was fortunate to make the postseason. I mean, obviously the bottom half of the Metro. Sorry, Jan, the Rangers. I mean, even though they made a little bit of a comeback towards the end, the Devils were there by default. It felt like they did enough early on in the season, and everyone else struggled on the bottom half. That it almost felt like in December you knew Washington, Carolina, New Jersey would be the top 3 teams. You weren't sure of the order, at least at that time, but almost 2 months in, you knew these would be the top 3 teams in the division, and they would make it. And that was the case. And it felt like we've known Carolina's going to play New Jersey for months already because of how well Washington played. But, New Jersey is still, they're a good team. They had injuries to deal with, and they did enough to get in. I just look at Carolina, and I know Jan mentioned it earlier about Brindamore resting some guys down the stretch, that Carolina's locked up. Why are you playing these guys if you don't have to? And as opposed to Dallas, where you're playing guys and you didn't need to play them either, and yet you had injuries, where Carolina just said, okay, we're going to rest them. Let's get fresh for the playoffs. And Carolina, they've been here before. I feel like they've gotten to at least the second round or further the last few years. They got swept by the Panthers a few years ago, and they had the home ice in the Eastern Conference Final. They lost to the Rangers last year in the second round, but they're still a playoff veteran team, even though the goaltending could be in question. But New Jersey, they have young talent. I just think Carolina's the better team. I think it's that simple. It's not disrespect to the Devils. I just think Carolina's a better team.
I mean, look, Carolina, the Devils did get Dougie Hamilton back, right? So that's a big acquisition return for them. They're without Jack Hughes, right? And as good as Nico Hischier has played this year, and as much as he's kind of stepped up again to be a good top 6 first or second line center, not having Jack Hughes is huge for that team, right? And the problem with Hughes is always hurt, right? And this has been I don't know if I'll call it an age-old issue, but if you go back over his seasons, right, every year he has missed a handful of games because of injuries, right? I mean, that's just unfortunately been a factor of life when it comes to having Jack Hughes on your team. And his absence is material for a squad that depends on their top players to score, right? Jesper Bratt's a great player, phenomenal player. Nico Hischier has been good, right? You had Paul Cotter at the beginning of the year, basically finding the fountain of youth almost to a certain extent. Not that he's old, but basically just rejuvenating his game and becoming a goal scorer, which is not something that we expected, right? We know Jacob Markstrom was great until he got hurt, and they cobbled together performances by Jake Allen and Nico Dawes, and they kind of held the fort until Markstrom came back. But I just think Carolina is just too deep. I think the acquisition of Logan Stankoven in the Mikko Rantanen deal has kind of helped them a little bit. Not that he's been so great, but he gives them length up front. We know how good Sebastian Aho is. We know how good some of the other players on that team are. They're a team that, has made it to the second round several times, just can't get over the hump. I just don't think New Jersey is going to have enough to get past them in this round.
Okay. Before we close the show with your picks, championship picks and so forth, Jan and Kevin, give me, actually Jan, because Kevin, you have a couple of 5 series in 5, so you'd be able to answer this easier. So since Jan, you don't have any series going in 5 or 4, of course, for that matter, which series in the first round do you think stands the best chance for a sweep?
It's tough.
because Kevin, you've got Carolina over New Jersey and Vegas over Minnesota in 5. So you only have to think about 2 teams. Jan, you got to think about almost all of them.
I'm going to go Carolina. Just a hunch. I mean, I don't think they will, but if I had to choose one, I mean, given what I've said before, I'm going to go with Carolina.
Okay. And would you feel the same way there, Kevin?
Yeah, I would have said Carolina too. So yeah, it's again the Hughes injury. I mean, you can't take away your best player and expect you to go far in the playoffs. You just can't do it. You do it to any team, and they're not going to go far. And Jack Hughes plays. I don't know how much success New Jersey has, but he's not there. No, Devils. I can't see them doing a lot of damage in this series.
Okay, so let's get your picks now. Championship picks, and in the final 4, we'll start in the East. We'll go through the East here, and in the final 4, Jan. You think you talked about Toronto. You think it's their year. So you have Washington and Toronto in the final, and that's the top 2 seeds. So you're going chalk in the East. And who do you have in the Cup? Who will win the East between Washington and Toronto?
Toronto.
Okay. So you're going to take Toronto in the Stanley Cup final.
Yep.
Meanwhile, Kevin, in the East, you've got Tampa Bay and Carolina in the final 4. Who's making the Cup?
I'm going to go with Tampa Bay. They've been there. I mean, they've been there. We know. I think Tampa Bay's just got the better offense out of the 2. That I don't know how many guys I could trust on Carolina to really lift them to. I saw it a few years ago when the Hurricanes played the Panthers. Even that. Sebastian Aho, he got shut down in that series, and they just don't have the scoring punch that Tampa Bay has. And Tampa Bay obviously has a better goaltending, better coaching. So I'm going to go with the Lightning over Carolina.
So you don't think, neither one of you apparently think that this Carolina team is really any different from some of the other teams we've seen in the postseason recently?
I just don't trust their goaltending. I mean, as much as I love Chekhov, I don't know whether or not either he or Frederick Anderson will be the one to kind of take them to that next step, which has been one of the key things that's been lacking for them in years past.
All right. And in the West, Jan, you have Colorado and Vegas.
Yep.
So you did not go chalk here. You've got Colorado a 5 seed, Vegas a 2 seed, and you ultimately decided to go with Colorado.
Yep. To
go to the Cup. And the reason why I know that is because Colorado is your championship pick.
That is correct. It's kind of hard to pick against Nathan McKinnon. McKinnon and Makar, just the 2 of them together are just ridiculously dangerous weapons. I do think we're going to have a Steven Stamkos-esque moment like we got years ago when he played in the finals and had a big goal. I think somewhere within the playoffs, Gabriel Landeskog is going to have a big moment in his comeback that's going to kind of help spur Colorado forward.
And Kevin, you, of course, have Colorado and Las Vegas in the final. In the West, you've got Vegas making it to the Cup. And again, just like I said with Jan, I know that because Vegas is going to be your championship pick. Another Stanley Cup for Las Vegas.
Well, I had to go with the 2 traditional hockey cities with Tampa Bay and Vegas, so that's what I figured for. No, I mean it's again, if Colorado's in the Stanley Cup final is a surprise, no, it's not. I just think Vegas would oust them in a series, and it could be a 6 or 7 game series, so it's not any sweep or anything like that, but. The Lightning, I think, they're very talented. The Golden Knights, obviously, are very talented. And you got good goaltending on each side, good coaching on each side. I think that'd be a very entertaining series. And I think in the end, the Golden Knights, it's so funny how no one has faith in the Jets. That Winnipeg has been cruising the whole season. They started 15 or 16-2, and they're like, Winnipeg's not going to make it very far.
Because they won this trophy.
That's what it is that you just like fade out. And I wonder really with Winnipeg and Washington, both of them, how good they've been the whole season, how far they go. And yeah, you'll win a round, but if you can't get past the second round, it'll be kind of interesting. But I do think that Vegas in the end, again, we can make arguments for every team, I feel like, but I think in the end, Vegas will defeat Tampa Bay in the Stanley Cup final.
And your sleeper in the overall scheme of things to do a little bit of damage that nobody's expecting, Jan. You feel if you had to pick a team to ruffle some feathers here, it would be both St. Louis and the Kings. You, of course, already have the Kings with a minor upset over Edmonton in the first round. But
you got two goalies there who both have their name on the cup. Each of them who've led their teams, right? Kemper led Colorado, Binnington led St. Louis. To me, the cup pedigree does make a difference especially in the postseason. If you're looking to spring an upset, having that goaltender that's done it before, that kind of has the notches on his belt, and both of them do. So I give each of them a shot, partly because of the goaltending, but partly because of the teams that are around them. St. Louis got hot to make the run into the postseason. LA's been a surprise team, I think, for part of the season. I just think depth-wise, Quentin Byfield's second half of the season, to me, gives me a lot of confidence as to what he can do in the postseason. I think he's going to be a difference maker for LA.
By the way, who is it an obvious choice if you had to pick a goalie that should be considered the best goalie in the postseason?
To me, it's still Vasilevsky. Just because of what he's done in the past. I'd probably put Bobrovsky maybe second after having won last year. That's just me, thinking top of my head. I still think you got to take Vasilevsky as your top goalie.
Kevin, do you agree, or do you have another goalie? There are a few.
You have Vasilevsky, obviously you have Connor Hellebuck, someone else who, we'll see if he can get a couple big wins in the postseason. But going through a lot of those teams, it's just so funny how important the goaltending is. And like, even looking at the screen, you see Edmonton. Do you trust it? No. Carolina? No. Washington? No. Toronto? No. Those are teams they all have stars on them, but do you trust the goaltending? And that's the big question. Even Colorado, even with Blackwood, do you trust that? I'm not sure. But when you look at the Panthers, Bobrovsky, Vasilevsky, Aiden Hill, Hellebuck, you feel like you got a shot in those series where the other one, Edmonton went to the Stanley Cup final with questionable goaltending last year, yes, but also you can hide questionable goaltending when you have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. You can hide it, and they were able to do that. So will they do it again? Probably not, but you look at these other teams with the goaltending, and that's, I think, is going to be the biggest thing, that I can't see that many teams going that far that don't have great goaltending.
And you have Ottawa as your sleeper, so you think they have a chance to maybe, because you already got them in the first round, upsetting Toronto, but you think they could maybe even do a little bit more damage than that. That's why you have them as your sleeper pick. So other than that, there's nothing else regarding any potential sleepers that you were looking at if you didn't take Ottawa?
No.
How about in the West? Give me a sleeper from the West.
It's tough for me because I don't think St. Louis is beating Winnipeg. I don't think Minnesota's beating Vegas. If you said the Kings, but is that big of a sleeper when the Kings finish with a better record than Edmonton?
Well, it's not just a series win, but yeah, they'd have to win more than a series.
I mean, it's hard because there's two sides of it where you say, all right, anybody can win the cup. But then I say, well, I don't think these teams can. I look at the bottom teams and I don't think that highly. Like Ottawa, yeah, I think they can beat Toronto, but I don't know if they're winning the next series or winning 3 series.
Sure.
I don't know if that's the case. So that's what makes it tough. This is why you have the difference of the teams down here as opposed to the teams up there. Yep. And I get the Panthers were a wild card and they beat the Bruins and they beat Toronto, they beat Carolina, that they went on a crazy run a few years ago. But
yep,
that's not. But that's not common. So that's where I just don't think any of those teams can make that kind of run. But then in a few weeks, when we see the Minnesota Wild in the Western Conference Final, then I was wrong.
Okay.
If that happens, I'm rocking my Kaprizov jersey for on.
Yeah, good.
The coverage begins on on Saturday. I believe it's 6. And who's broadcasting these games? What channels?
ESPN, TNT, because NBA and NHL are on both of them, so they got to. That's how they had to manipulate the schedule. No more Versus and no more NBC Sports Network.
Okay, so it's just ESPN and NBC. I mean, and
ESPN and TNT.
TNT. Yeah. That's it
until you get to the finals.
Yeah,
and then that'll be.
I got to check. I think it's ABC, isn't it?
Probably network, right? Yeah, ABC and ESPN. Is
it okay? Because it was TNT 2 years ago against Vegas, and it was ESPN
so maybe
last
TNT
year.
again this year. Maybe TNT again this year.
Not network. Okay. Like they got a lot of stuff going on network TV. What do they have? Like 99% of the things on network TV now are game shows. So why not actually have games?
Well, then and they may have the finals in terms of basketball, so that could be an impact also. So
I'm going to go ahead and pick Tampa Bay over Las Vegas. That's going to be my pick. Tampa Bay winning another cup. And of course, why not? It's the hockey capital of the world, Florida. So give them another cup. And I'm sure the purists will just love to eat that up. No question about it. All right.
Just off Florida off the map then, please.
Yeah. That's going to wrap it up. Now, we are going to be back at some point during the postseason, so please subscribe to the channel. If you're a hockey fan, you want to know what we think. Hopefully, we'll be able to do this round by round. This was the longer version because it was the beginning of the postseason, so we'll definitely shorten these things up every round we go. And this is the thing about hockey, fellas. It's what, 2 months?
Yep, late June.
Yeah, so this is why when you talk about getting some rest, it's a big difference. In football, it's an extra couple of weeks. In hockey, it's 2 months. So, and they're pretty physical in hockey, just as well as they are in football. So it's a big deal. It's a long playoff run. And then the fun thing about hockey is as soon as the Stanley Cup is awarded, boom, they're right into action with the draft and free agency like a week later. So They don't mess around because they can't afford to. They don't have time. Such a long season. All right, guys, I appreciate it. Great job. Kevin, what are you going to be doing? Are you going to be doing any other videos or are you done now since the regular season's done?
Yeah, I'm done with the regular season done, but so few games. We're going to stick to the NASCAR videos on Fridays, best bets. So, yeah, the hockey we're going to take a break from simply because, now you don't have like the first period videos I was doing just now. It's just not going to be, as prevalent with, with so few matchups.
And Jan, what are you going to be up to?
Rangers debrief probably a little bit. I'll probably take a little bit of a break there. It's been a long season and the season has ended with some stuff that's gone on, though. Clearly all the drama that exists within the front office and the coach and everything else. That's it's going to be a very interesting couple of weeks in Rangers land. There is an enormous amount of decisions that have to be made. That's going to play it over the next 2 months until the draft.
Do you have a prediction?
I kind of have a feeling Laviolette's going to be fired. I think Drury does come back, though nothing's set in stone there. And I do think there's going to be a lot of names that get not now, but probably heading into the draft and free agency. There's going to be a lot of names that are definitely going to be mentioned and a lot of deals rumored in terms of name players that have been around for a while getting moved.
Okay. Well, if you're a Ranger fan, we'll have a link in the description for all of the content that Jan is a part of, as well as how to contact these guys. You see them right there on Twitter. There's the handle there for their respective X accounts. And again, we're going to talk more hockey. So subscribe to the channel, and this way you don't miss a show. And hit that notification bell because that will let you know whenever we have a video like this. That is live, and you never know when it's going to be. And the notification bell is a great way to alert you to a show that's not scheduled on the channel here at Proline TV. So for Jan Levine, for this gentleman, Kevin Rogers, and for me, Greg DePalma, with my famous Wayne Gretzky photo back here, even though I'm not an Edmonton Oilers fan, we'll see you next time as we talk more hockey here on Proline TV.